Hey there, everybody. It's Steve Van Tassel. I'm here with Jay Pounds, and this is the Dynasty Owner Podcast. What's up, Jay?
Hey Steve, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's been a week, man. It's been a week. We don't want to get into that, but Jay and I usually record this like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but life has intervened for both of us, and it's now 9:38 at p.m. So we'll see what's going on. I'm kind of old, so this is getting closer to like bedtime time for me. So we'll see. If I nod off partway through, Jay, you gotta wake me up.
All right, sounds good.
Cool. So for everybody who doesn't know, thank you for joining us. This is the Dynasty Owner podcast. We are going to talk about Dynasty Owner fantasy football, and Dynasty Owner is a fantasy football platform where we use real NFL salaries and contracts instead of. And it's a dynasty format, so you can own somebody forever and ever if you want. You just have to pay their salary, and we have a salary cap, a hard salary cap. And which is 70% of the NFL salary cap. So this year it's 145.74 million, and you can have 25 to 30 players on your roster, but you just have to fill it out under that amount. So if you want Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, that's great. He takes $45 million, and you got to fill the rest of your roster with kind of lower price players, just like the Chiefs have to do, basically.
Yeah.
So if you want more details, go to dynastyowner.com. Go to dynasty_owner on Twitter. Check it out. If you like what you hear, you can follow me. I'm Steve VT33, and Jay is
at J Pounds NFL.
Cool. So thanks for joining us. We got a good show hopefully today. We're going to talk about. I guess the first thing we're going to talk about is the first Dynasty Owner startup drafts are this coming weekend. There's a few of them going on. I'm not in any of them. Are you in any of them, Jay?
No, not this weekend.
Okay. So I don't know. There's a bunch of people going to draft. Some of them are going to be new. Some of them probably going to be returning Dynasty owners. I bet. I'm sure there's probably a mix. But and I know a lot of people have already done drafts. I mean, I'm doing a couple of rookie drafts and other things. But for Dynasty owner, we can't really start our drafts until we have salaries. And so we have to wait till the NFL draft is over. And so now that the NFL draft is over and they have salaries and some of the undrafted rookies are getting salaries, we can finally start to do our drafts, because we can't, you couldn't draft Chris Olive until you knew what his salary was. You could have drafted Malik Willis and hoped that he got a low salary like he did, but we can't really do that. It's not the way we can do our games. So finally this weekend there's going to be the first startup drafts. And so I thought what Jay and I would do is talk about guys we think are going to go in the first round of some of these startup drafts. And so Jay, Dynasty, we're going to talk Dynasty owner. So this is going to be a lot different than like some people, if you don't know Dynasty owner, are going to think about hearing. You're going to hear guys you wouldn't guess as first round draft picks, and you're going to hear guys not mentioned who you're like, how can he not go in the first round?
Yeah, exactly. Like Steve hinted to earlier, I pulled up a startup mock draft from Sleeper earlier, and I'm going to point out some differences here, and just in the first round for who me and Steve think is going to go versus who actually went in a draft that just happened today.
Okay.
So you guys will see. If you're a new user here, just stumbling by, you'll definitely see a huge difference here.
Yeah, and I can go over. I have I can pull up the first round from that draft that we did, the mock draft that we did live last Sunday, right after the NFL draft, and sort of give people an idea too of like who goes in the first round. I mean, and this was I bet this is a pretty typical first round for Dynasty owner this year. It might not be the exact same guys or anything, but I don't think it's a bad representation. So I'm trying to find the mock draft. I got a lot of things here on this computer that I can't find. So I'll find it. I'll find it. But so I mean, why don't we go through the obvious picks? I mean, it's pretty. I think we all know, or both of us, Jay, we know who the 1-1 pick is going to be in, if not every Dynasty owner league, most of the Dynasty owner leagues.
Yeah. Also, I put a few like sleeper names in here that we'll talk about at the end after these obvious ones. I think there's probably 6, 7, 8 players that are a lock to go in the first round, and then the rest you'll see some change. But like Steve was saying, I think it's Jonathan Taylor is the obvious choice here. I don't see anybody shying away from Jonathan Taylor if they have the 1-1. He's just too much of a guaranteed workhorse that you don't find in today's NFL. And with Matt Ryan there aging, I think he's going to get a ton of work again this season, and he's going to be a stud again this season, barring injury, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, and in terms of salary, he's also just under a shade under $2 million. It's like $1.96 million. So you're getting basically the number one. If you get the first pick in your dynasty or startup draft, and you draft Jonathan Taylor, you're getting the best running back, and you're getting him at a great price.
Yeah, when you look at some of the second contract guys like CMC and Kamara and Aaron Jones and things like that, you'll see how much of a value Jonathan Taylor really is.
Oh yeah, I mean, some people who play Dynasty probably don't follow how much contracts are, but
Right.
I mean, CMC is $16 million, Alvin Kamara is 15, and even a guy like Joe Mixon is 12 million.
Yeah.
So they are. I mean, some of those guys are expensive, and in our scoring system, Taylor was the number one running back last year. So
yeah, it's just a value you can't beat Jonathan Taylor. I'm not a dynasty owner.
Yes. So, all right. So, who do you think are? Give me another one of your. You said there are like 5. How many locks do you think you have? First round locks.
Oh, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'd say 9 for sure. That'll
9 out of 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
just don't see with all the the big names they got paid this offseason and last and it's gonna show in our draft, I feel like.
Okay. So give me a second guy who's guaranteed to go in the first round of every dynasty owner draft.
I'll switch positions here, and that's Jamar Chase. There's no way this guy falls out of the first round in any dynasty owner draft, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of got to agree with you on that. I mean, he put up huge numbers, only $7.7 million, which sounds like a lot, but when you think about, the contracts for like Devontae Adams at 28 million, even a Mike Williams makes 20 million now, and Christian Kirk makes 18 million. And you can have Jamar Chase for 7.7 million. Yeah, I got to agree with you. I think he's a bona fide first rounder, regardless of the league. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I'll go back to running back. I'll take the next one, and I'll go back to running back, and I'll steal your team, and I'll say Najee Harris because that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer for me. Even if you don't like the Steelers, you have to pick Najee Harris in the first round if you can. 3.26 million. What was he ranked in Dynasty Owner last year? I have to look that up. I think he was like he was the third ranked running back in Dynasty. And our scoring system's a little different. We can go into that later, but it's pretty similar. But he was the third ranked running back in the Dynasty Owner scoring system. And he's on his rookie contract for 3.26 million. And you actually get him for 3 more years at that salary, which is pretty incredible. So that's a great building block for your startup team.
Yeah, it really is. And I counted that wrong. It was 6, not 9.
Okay.
For the first round locks.
9 seemed like a lot to me, honestly.
Yeah.
But 6 seems more, especially because our leagues were all 12-team leagues. I know everybody's in different types of leagues every once in a while, and you get some weird numbers, but we're 12 teams. We are startup drafts. We're snake drafts. It's 25 rounds. So, and these are guys who pretty much we're guaranteeing are going to go in the first round. All right. So I took Najee. Who's the 4th guaranteed pick?
DeAndre Swift. I don't see any way he falls out of the first round. They're struggling at quarterback. Dan Campbell clearly wants to be physical. Jamal Williams is another year older. I just see this being the year for DeAndre Swift, especially if he's able to stay healthy. Along with his pass catching ability, the dude is just tremendous in every aspect.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think the offense is going to run. I mean, the offense is going to have to run through him, and in terms of we talk about it a lot because it's Dynasty Owner, but 2.1335 million. So he's a teeny bit more expensive than Jonathan Taylor, but if you think about like comparing him to like somebody in his own division, like Dalvin Cook, he's 1/6 of the cost. So you
Yeah.
can have Dalvin Cook at 12, I think it's 12.6 million, or you can have DeAndre Swift at 2.1 million and then use that $10.5 million to get another player.
Yeah, the way I've done a few mock drafts and took expensive players in the first round, and it's so hard to build a team that way. You really have to target the cheap, productive contracts in your startup draft early, otherwise you're going to be in for a struggle.
Yeah, and 2 years ago I did something about this. The last year I did something about when people drafted in 2020, and what I found was that if you could draft a high salary player in the first round, the problem is he has to hit. Like if there's an injury problem or he doesn't have a good year, that is very difficult to overcome because it's your first pick, which makes it hard already. And then the fact that you spent so much in salary on him makes it even more difficult. You have to hit a lot of other things or make trades or get out of it. You just have to have everything else kind of go right in order to win your title. If you, for example, drafted like Michael Thomas last year in the first round,
Yeah,
it would have just
yeah.
been devastating to your team.
I'm glad you brought that up because it compares to the real life NFL so much. If you look at like back when the Ravens had to pay Joe Flacco, he had to hit for that team to be successful, and he didn't, so the team crumbled. And it's the same thing Steve's talking about here. If you're gonna take up a big chunk of your salary that early, you better hit.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can spend a lot on salary, and if the guy hits, you're fine. But if he doesn't, for injury or just even like an Ezekiel Elliott, he was like what the number 6 or 7 running back last
Yeah.
year, which is fine. But when you're ponying up $15 million for him, he can't be the number. Fine is not fine. I mean, to kind of put it silly. I mean, it's okay. He's in your regular dynasty league. You'd be like, maybe I want a little bit more, but I'll take that.
Yep.
And here you're like, man, I spent $15 million on that guy, and he got beat out by Najee Harris, and he got beat out by a bunch of other guys who cost a fifth of that. What the hell? All right. All right, so DeAndre Swift is our fourth. Our fifth one, I'm going to switch gears again. I won't take a running back. And this is when we did our mock draft the other day. This was the guy I took in the first round. I think I had the 6th pick, and it's Justin Herbert. And you just, I know he's probably not going to be the number 1 quarterback in terms of points, dynasty on fantasy points, but he's so much more efficient than the rest of them that you can't pass up that efficiency. Last year he was the 3rd ranked quarterback in Dynasty Owner, but the people above the person right above him was Justin Herbert is $6.44 million salary. The guy above him, Josh Allen, this year his salary is going to be $43 million. The guy below him was Patrick Mahomes, whose salary is $45 million. So, while it might be nice to have those couple extra points from Josh Allen, those couple extra points aren't worth $37 million.
No, not at all.
They're just not worth it. I can find those couple of extra points somewhere else. So I'm taking her. If I'm in the middle of a dynasty owner draft, like startup draft, and Herbert's available at like the 7 or 8, I'm leaping on that pick.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes some leagues, depending on what quarterbacks don't go first in the first round. You grab running backs, maybe an occasional wide receiver, but dynasty owner, part of the reason why our scoring system's a little bit different. I know a lot of people play in leagues that have 4 points for a passing touchdown, but dynasty owner is 6. It's a full 6 points for a passing touchdown. So quarterbacks score more in our format. And while every quarterback scores more, obviously, if those guys throw a lot of touchdowns, those points add up. And Herbert threw a lot of touchdowns last year. So he was worth it. He was worth it last year in terms of that. He had how many touchdowns? He had 38 touchdowns last year and 3 rushing touchdowns. He's not a great rusher, but I'll take a couple of rushing touchdowns too. So all right, so that means, Jay, you have to give us the 6th guaranteed lock first round dynasty owner draft pick.
For me, this is a pretty easy one. It's Justin Jefferson. The dude's done nothing but put up elite numbers since he's been in the NFL. He's arguably the number one dynasty wide receiver right now. It's him or Jamar Chase. There's no other player that can compete with the two right now. So it's got to be Justin Jefferson.
Okay. Yeah. And Justin Jefferson, we talked earlier about Jamar Chase's $7.7 million and how that's a bargain. Justin Jefferson is $3.28 million. So he is even more of a bargain. And, I think you could pick either one of them first wide receiver off the board. I know in our mock draft that we did, it was Jamar Chase was taken as the first wide receiver and then Jefferson was the second, but it's personal. I think at certain points it's personal preference. And especially when you're starting up a startup draft, sometimes you don't think as much about salary in the first couple of rounds. You think a little bit about it, but you're not really focused on it as much. When you start to get up there and you realize how much salary you have left, at that point, then salary drives some of the later decisions. But I think first round, you can figure out a way to pick up that $4 million if you like Jamar Chase better than Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So now I have to pick the first guy who's not a guaranteed lock at number 7.
Before you do this, I hate to ask, just in case you can't, is Chris able to edit these?
Yes.
Okay. Am I able to take a quick break for 1 second?
Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll be right back.
No problem.
All right. Sorry about that.
No. Hey, is everything okay?
Yeah. It was a guy from work. He had a couple questions.
Oh, okay. No problem. Yeah. Okay. All right. So back to it. I've got to take this. I've got to pick the first non-guaranteed guy here. And I guess I don't think maybe he's not guaranteed. Maybe he is. I don't know. I really like this pick. Javonte Williams isn't a guaranteed first round pick.
Yeah, what happened is I put way too many names on here. I meant to only put 12, so when I'm counting, it's messing me up way up.
Okay.
I still have another 2 that I think are going to go in the first round for sure, and Javonte was one of them.
Okay, well, I think Javonte has to go in the first round. I can see some people being a little bit tempered on him because of Melvin Gordon coming back, but he's still $2.2 million. He still was great last year. Even splitting time with Melvin Gordon, they were like the running back 19 and 20 in Dynasty owner. And, the Melvin Gordon thing could only be another 1 year, and you get the Javonte Williams for 3 years at that salary.
Yeah.
So, I'm happy to take him in the middle of the rounds. If he survives to like 8 or 9 in my league, I I'd probably be all over that unless one of those top 6 are there.
Yeah,
And then I'd even take him over other guys there.
I actually took Javante as I think it was the 3rd pick in our mock draft over the last weekend. He's one of my favorite younger running backs. I actually liked him more than Najee coming out, and I still do talent wise. So I'm all over Javante definitely in the first round.
Yeah, and you did take him with the 3 pick after
Yep.
The first 2 picks were Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris. So yeah, that's that's a very good 1, 2, 3 punch there at the top of a draft. So who do we have as the 8th person?
Yeah, with the 8th one I definitely think he's going in the first round, and it's because of the positional value and his salary, and it's Kyle Pitts. I mean, he's a young tight end. He had over 1,000 yards last season. It's just everything's aligning for him to have a monster year with Calvin Ridley's suspension and all that. I know Marcus Mariota isn't the best passing quarterback, but somebody's got to catch passes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm looking at this right now, and actually I didn't realize this as I look at his stats from last year. He only had 1 touchdown last year.
Yeah, I did. He definitely struggled in the red zone, but I think that was a product of the offense, not necessarily him. They utilized Cordero Patterson a ton in the red zone last year, and I just kind of think he, the adjustment to the NFL and things like that, and being such a critical situation. They always say it's so much harder to gain yards in the red zone, which obviously statistics show that, and I think a lot of that factored into it. I'm not too worried about his touchdown production by any means.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. And the reason why I was bringing it up was because he was like the number 6 tight end last year.
Yeah.
And he had 1 touchdown. I mean, in terms of our scoring system, if he had an extra touchdown, he would have been 5th. If he had like 4 extra touchdowns, he would have been 4th. So, I mean, you see how close, I mean, he was 6th and how close he was to being even a little bit higher, with just like 5 or 6 is kind of an average number of touchdowns for somebody who's catching 1,000 yards worth of passes.
Yeah. And I seen an interesting thing on Kyle Pitts the other day, and I'm curious to see your opinion on it. You remember Marquise Colston?
Yes, yeah.
He was originally a tight end, and they lined him up at wide receiver so much it forced every fantasy platform to move him to a wide receiver. Do you see that happening with Pitts possibly at all? I didn't look at the splits or anything, but I know he lined up out wide a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that a little bit when they were talking about Mike Gesicki in terms of his franchise tag. They were saying his agents might argue he was more of a wide receiver because where he lines up and not really a tight end. I don't know. I mean,
if anybody's got an argument for it, it's Pitts. I mean, definitely not Gesicki.
No, that's true. And it's funny because I remember I didn't hear about that with Pitts, but I did definitely remember that with Gesicki, and it was all because of the franchise tag amount, because the difference between the tight end franchise tag is like 10.9 million and the wide receiver franchise tag was more like 19 million. So his agent had a good reason for kind of trying to bring that topic up. I mean, he had 9 million good reasons for bringing that topic up, but it'd be interesting. I mean, it would drive Pitts' value way down in terms of that. Yeah. I mean, he'd still get the same points, but he'd be competing at that point. He's in the same categories like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. And, I agree with you in terms of like, he's a first rounder. If he's a tight end, if he's a wide receiver, he's going early, but I don't think he's a first rounder, especially not for the Falcons offense.
No, not at all. I mean, especially with Drake London just getting there, maybe if Drake London wasn't there, but he is.
Yeah, but I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure I would take Pitts in the first round. I don't know. I know he's really good, but I just think that I could take another tight end in the same kind of area and get, and be okay with it. I'm not saying I would draft. I actually not sure I would even draft a tight end in the first round. I guess I would prefer to get other positions first and kind of pick up a tight end in the middle part of the round. I'm also somebody who occasionally will just punt tight end and just kind of scrap for them at the end. I've done that a couple of times, and it works out, doesn't work out. It depends. Like a couple of years ago, I took Gronk, and that worked out really well. But then I've had other years where I had like to play Will Disley at a tight end spot, and that ain't working in any league
Yeah, yeah.
unless it's a league that credits blocking.
Yeah, I'm definitely not taking Pitts in the early first round by any means, but I see him being a definitely a strong candidate for the 9 through 12 picks.
Okay, I can see it, but I could also see myself if I was like at the 11. Maybe I don't know. Maybe if I was at the 11, I might do it. I might try to think if he could slip to the second round and I could get
Yeah,
somebody else in the first round. So, all right. So, um, with the number 9, I'm going to, I'm going to take somebody. I actually, who am I putting up here? I would say that I'm going to take Austin Eckler. And, he's a little bit more expensive than most of these other guys we've talked about. He's 6.125 million. But in terms of, I mean, he was the number 2 running back in Dynasty owner last year. I know that the Chargers drafted Isaiah Spiller, but they really don't have an established number 2 running back to take snaps or anything really away from him. I mean, not that they're comparable in terms of salary, but the Cowboys have Tony Pollard there. So
yeah,
if Zeke Elliott gets banged up a little bit, they'll just put Pollard in for a while and be okay and be fine. I mean, the talent drop, it isn't severe. I mean, Eckler, they're drafting another guy to back him up. I mean, the other guys behind him are Larry Roundtree and Justin Jackson. I mean, there's really not a great second option there. So that's why I like Eckler. I like Herbert. I like the Chargers offense a lot. And so, I'm not guaranteeing every Eckler goes in the first round in every dynasty owner draft, but if you took him in the first round, especially the latter part of it, I wouldn't be criticizing it.
yeah, yeah. I actually had him on on this list as well. I do like. There's one, maybe two more running backs I would think about taking ahead of him. And the one I think I for sure would be Cam Akers. I know injury is a huge concern with him, but I just really like the way he looked in the playoffs last season. After he came back from an Achilles, and then he gets the whole offseason to kind of rehab and just get back to his original self. And if he stays healthy, I think it's a great pick and a good offense.
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's a good offense is an understatement, Jay. I
Right.
mean, it's yeah. I mean, and Akers, we talked about some salaries earlier. He's actually cheaper than every other running back we've already talked about. He's only $1.54 million. So that's a very premium running back. I agree. The injury concerns are the only reason to keep him out of the first
Yep.
round.
That's why I don't have him as a lock is the injury concerns.
Yeah, and that's really justifiable because I mean, if you're concerned a little bit about him, then maybe you decide to take DeAndre Swift instead. I mean, the
Yeah.
price difference is $600,000, so you can be justified in worrying about the injuries a little bit. But yeah, no, I do like. I actually in a startup last year I drafted Akers pretty early, even though he had already gone out. His ACL had already gone out, and you pretty much knew he wasn't playing in the regular season. And I'm very pleased with that pick now because the
Yeah.
way he came back and rehabbed and looks ready. I mean, yeah, I didn't have him last year, but I get a couple more years at $1.5 million. So
Yeah, and if he came back in like week 15 and played that well all the way through the Super Bowl, he would be a lock for the first round, no problem. So you're definitely getting tremendous value if he stays healthy.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. So we're nearing kind of the end of our first round here. And uh, I'm looking at the guys who were taken in our first round of that mock draft. And, we've already done the top 9. It's funny because Cam Akers went way late. You actually got him in the second round at the
Yeah.
10 spot in that draft. I'm thinking that the other guy I'm gonna take here. Oh God, I'm trying to think of who else I would take in the first round. This is a little tough. This is kind of where it gets to be decision points.
Yep.
Uh, I guess you can't. The there's a couple of guys out there who you could argue you would take, but because they have really low salaries, but they only have 1 year left on their contract, and then they're going to get paid, and they're going to get paid a lot. They're all wide receivers, and I'm talking about Terry McLaurin, DK Metcalf, and Debo Samuel. I mean, they're all like around a million. Debo's like 1.8 million, but I'm getting them for that this year. I know next year I'm going to have to pay them at least $20 million.
Yeah.
So that makes me shy away a little bit from those guys. So I think the guy I'll pick Joe Burrow. I'll go with another quarterback. I mean, he's $9 million, because he was the number one pick, a little not 9.047 million. But especially if you have like the 11 or the 12 pick, and then you can have your choice of a second round running back wide receiver. That's not a bad pick for me, because especially if you're in the 11 12 spot, if you think about it, if you don't take Burrow there, and you're not getting him when he comes back around if you don't take him in the first or second round, you're definitely not getting him when he comes back in the third round. And at that point, you might be stuck with thinking about taking one of the really expensive quarterbacks, like the Josh Allens, the Deshaun Watsons, the Patrick Mahomes at that point, and really blowing up your salary cap, because most of I think by the 30, like it'd be like the high 30s pick. I think most of those good quality quarterbacks are going to be taken. And so you kind of have to strike with Burrow at that point if you're at the back end of the first round. So
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I personally think they're going to have the best offense in football this year with the upgraded offensive line. Jamar Chase, another year of experience. You got T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. They added Hayden Hurst. I think he's, if not as good, just about as good as Uzama was. So I don't see any reason this isn't a guaranteed top three offense.
yeah, I mean, and he was the number 8 quarterback in Dynasty Owner last year. But out of the top 10 quarterbacks, there's only 3 who had salaries of under 15, who have salaries this year of under 15 million, and that's Herbert, Burrow, and Kyler Murray, who's 8.9 million. But you already know Kyler Murray's 5th-year option was picked up, and I think it's like $29 million. So at a minimum you're paying him $29 million next year.
Yeah.
And that's if he doesn't get a long-term deal. That's if they have an impasse and he ends up playing on that 5th-year option for 1 year. So and you get at least you get 2 years with Burrow at that salary. So, I mean, it's not great. Would I much rather have one of the other 10 guys we discussed already? Yeah, but if you get stuck with the 11 pick, or not even stuck, if you have the 11 pick, it's not a bad route to go.
Yeah. I agree completely on that one. And
right.
So who's our 12? I gotta make a point here with the 12th pick, and I know we went kind of late in our draft, but like I said, the rookies just they weren't showing up like they will after the ADP really gets going, and it's Breece Hall. If you look back at the last couple drafts, CEH was a number 1 overall pick in the expert draft you and Tim were.
Yeah.
Did with,
oh yeah, I remember.
And it's he was consistently a first round pick there. Yeah, and I don't see why Breece doesn't end up getting there. I really don't. I think he will, just because of the value you're getting. You get 4 years of him at a very cheap salary, and he's every bit of he looks every bit of talented as people are saying they're saying he is. He looks phenomenal.
Now let me ask you this, because I was in that draft, that expert league draft, when CH3 went 1-1, and we were all very surprised, I think. I mean, he was expected to be a first rounder, and probably a high first rounder, but the 1-1 was not expected at all. But part of the reason why everybody was so hyped up on him was because he was playing for Kansas City, and they had that offense at that point. I mean, Breece Hall's going to the Jets. There's a big difference between going to the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback and going to the New York Jets with Zach Wilson as your quarterback.
I agree completely. But if you look back, even a year further, a year after, I can't remember right now. It's been a long day. But Jonathan Taylor, he was going with the 1-1, 1-2.
Yeah.
So I notice a trend, and I'm curious to see if Breece gets there as well.
Okay. Well, okay. Now so you think he's going to be a first round pick. Let me ask the question. He's if if you have a back end first round pick, are you taking him with a first round pick?
If I can come away with something like a Burrow and a Brees Hall, or uh, I don't know who else would fall here, maybe Jefferson for some reason, and a Brees Hall, yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay. I mean, because when you do a snake draft, the 12 pick, whoever you take with the 12 pick and the 13 pick, they're kind of interchangeable in
yeah,
terms of
yeah,
being a first round draft pick. I mean, it's it's basically semantics at that point. The same team got that guy in both
yeah.
spots. So okay, well, so anybody else so those are the 12 guys we think will go in the first round. Anybody else who you think could slip into the first round? I know in our there were two guys in our mock draft that we didn't discuss here that went in the first round. But and I'll take why don't I take the first one of them?
Go ahead.
And well, I'm in DC, but I'm not a Commanders, Redskins football team, whatever you want to call them fan. But somebody took Terry McLaurin in the first round of our mock draft,
Forgot
and
about that. Yeah,
you know Terry McLaurin is still his contract is under $1 million. It's $962,000. And so, I mean, that's rock bottom pricing. He's the clear number one wide receiver here in Washington. I mean, he hasn't performed great, but maybe with it, now that they have hopefully a competent number two wide receiver opposite him, that could open up things a little bit for him. I mean, let's face it, when DeAndre Carter is your number two wide receiver or Cam Sims is your number two wide receiver, you don't really have to focus a lot of attention on the second wide receiver,
yeah.
and so you can kind of focus a lot more on Terry McLaurin. So somebody took him in our startup draft, in our mock startup draft, and I don't like the pick. I wouldn't do it myself, but he's a possibility, and it's salary driven. I mean, in large part, that pick is salary driven. You're taking a guy for under $1 million and hoping he has a top 12 season, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's you couldn't have said it better on that one.
Yeah. All right. So you can discuss the other guy who was taken in the first round in our draft. Do you remember who it was? Do you
No,
have
I
it?
don't.
Okay. It was Jalen Waddle.
Jalen Waddle, yeah. I have him on
So
my list as well. I don't disagree with it per se, but I wouldn't do it personally because of the addition of Tyreek Hill, and I just their skill sets are kind of redundant, so it just worries me a little bit. I actually one of the trades we'll talk about here in a little bit. I acquired Jalen Waddle, so I'm definitely still high on him, but I don't know about first round high on him.
yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not a big Tua fan. I'm a Patriots fan, first of all, in case people don't know. So I'm probably a little against these sort of things, but I do like Waddle. I really like him a lot. I agree with you on the first round being a first round pick. I don't know. I mean, would I take him if I was in the middle of a second round and he fell to like the 18 pick? Oh, probably, yeah. I mean, depending on who I had with my first pick, I'd probably jump on that. But with the 11 or 12 pick or the 10 pick as he went in our mock draft, it seems like a stretch. He seems like somebody you could maybe get if you took him with the 10, you maybe could have got him with the 15, and I'd be a lot happier with him at the 15 than I am at the 10,
Yeah, yeah,
personally. But we could. I mean, we know. I know Nick, one of our friends, the head commissioner here at Dynasty, loves Waddle. He didn't take him in that startup draft, but he loves Waddle, and he was right last year. I mean, Waddle went. Waddle went at the end of first round rookie drafts last year.
yeah,
And he went in the second round of a lot of Dynasty owner rookie drafts last year, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, because he was a top 10 wide receiver last year overall. Overall, never mind rookies, he was a top 10 producing wide receiver. But then again, they didn't have Tyreek Hill on that team.
yeah. And he's going at the back end of the first round to rosters that were already competing. So
Yeah,
those
exactly.
guys were doing flips when they when they got him.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and those were probably because they had those picks. They might have been some of the better teams too, so they probably were even more ecstatic to add a talent like that at the back end of their first round. So, all right. Well, anybody else who you think could slip into the first round? we could tell. I mean, I already mentioned the kind of two of the other sort of cheaper wide receivers in DK Metcalf and Debo Samuel, and I could see somebody doing it. Um, so, and the one thing, if folks don't know salaries, and I've tried to mention them every time, one of the things to note about this all these guys that we've talked about is not a single one of them makes over $10 million. The highest paid of them is Burrow, and he's 9.05, I think.
Yeah, and when you look at the other quarterbacks, he's a massive value. So it's you're kind of looking past the 9 million at that point.
Yeah, and so contrast that. So tell us, you said there was a sleeper draft you looked at, like a startup draft. Give us the first round in that one.
So the first round, it's a 12-person draft. It was CMC 1, Jonathan Taylor at 2, Devontae Adams at 3, Derrick Henry at 4, Cooper Kupp at 5, Dalvin Cook at 6, Austin Eckler at 7, Justin Jefferson at 8, Najee Harris at 9, Joe Mixon at 10, Jamar Chase at 11, and Tyreek Hill at 12. Followed by Diggs, Samuel, Kamara, and Chubb.
And all those players, all those high salary players, none of them we mentioned. Those are great players, don't get me wrong, but from a dynasty owner perspective, they're harder to take. It's harder to take somebody like that. I mean, if you take Devontae Adams in the first round and take $28 million of your salary cap, and he gets an unfortunate injury and is out a couple of weeks, that's like almost a fifth of your salary right there.
Yeah, you're
it's
done
close
for.
to a fifth of your, and that's tied into one player. And that's the difference between dynasty owner and regular dynasty fantasy is, if he's your number one pick in a regular dynasty league, you just find somebody else. Maybe they're not as good, but in dynasty, you have to find somebody else, and you have to be able to afford to pay him, which means maybe you have to get rid of other guys who you want to pay somebody else. And the sort of unintended consequences just are out there for you.
Yeah.
So that's why personally, I will not draft anybody who makes more than $10 million in the first round of a dynasty owner draft. I mean, if I do startup drafts this year, there's no way I'm taking anybody at that salary. I mean, even if I have the 12, I'm not going to do it.
I think that's a perfect cutoff mark too, is the $10 million, because you're still, Burrow's still included in there, and yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense strategically.
Yeah, and in our startup draft that we did, the first pick with over that amount was somebody took Cooper Kupp with the 2-1 pick. I mean, Cooper Kupp makes $15.75 million, and he was the number one wide receiver last year. I think he was like the overall seventh most points in Dynasty last year. I have to look it up, but
that sounds about
pretty
right.
sure he was seventh. He was between Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott. He was the highest rated non-quarterback, and you had to drop all the way to 12 to find Jonathan Taylor after that.
Yeah, and he was the only expensive player I had on the list, and it's simply because of the unbelievable season he had last year, paired with his $15 million salary. It's a value compared to what players like Devontae Adams or even Tyreek Hill's about to get. It's just a value at this point. So you can justify taking him in the back of the first round. I would wait till the early second if I was going to draft him. But yeah, you can't argue with Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. Well, the other players who I think you could consider is, and you possibly can consider CeeDee Lamb. He's $3.5 million. I know the Dallas offense has a lot of weapons, but he's, with Amari Cooper gone, he's probably the number one wide receiver there. Somebody who I took in the second round, and I was happy with it, but I think before the NFL draft, if you'd said Antonio Gibson in the first round, people wouldn't have looked at you side-eyed or anything. But now, because they've drafted Brian Robinson, and it's looking a little bit like they're trying, and they have J.D. McKissick back too, I don't know if Antonio Gibson's that workhorse back that people thought they were getting last year. I mean, last year people thought he was a potential league winner, and he played through injury all year and toughed it out. But he had a good year. Don't get me wrong, but he didn't have a league winning year.
Yeah, the Gibson hype got so bad last off season before the start of the regular season that I got offered Jonathan Taylor for Antonio Gibson straight up.
And you took it, I assume.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't hit accept fast enough.
Wow. Okay. That's yeah. That is hype. That is definite hype. So, all right. So, um, well, great. So our second topic was going to be first rookies off the board, and I think we already kind of started talking about that when you said Brees Hall in the first round. So I think the consensus is that he's going to be the number one pick in not all dynasty owner rookie drafts, but a good percentage of them, like
Yeah,
75, 80%, right?
yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah.
There's no way he falls under. I'd say 70 is probably the low end.
Yeah, I mean, even if you had the number one pick and you didn't really need a running back, I don't think you could pass him up. It would be hard to do.
Yeah, a
Be
hundred
really hard
percent.
to do. So, because I know last year, I think Trevor Lawrence was the number one pick in about 60, between 50 and 60%. I'd have to look back. I don't have the exact number on me, but he was a majority. And Najee was pretty much the rest of them. There were a couple of Pitts and a couple of Jamar Chase overall number one picks, but those were the four guys actually last year. It was Lawrence, Harris, and a couple of Pitts and a couple of Jamar Chases. So yeah, so I got to think you're right. I think Brees Hall is like 70. I think you're right. 70% is probably if he falls below that, it would have to be because he has an injury between now and then.
Yeah, and mainly because we don't have any elite quarterbacks. We have zero elite tight ends this year. Yeah, the wide receiver position's deep, but I think that's even more of a reason for Brees to be boosted up.
Yeah, because you could. I mean, if you had the number four pick and you really wanted Drake London, and somebody took him right ahead of you, you'd probably just go, "Oh, okay, I'll take Garrett Wilson.
Yep.
He's fine."
Yeah,
I might be a
and
little
you
bit
wouldn't even.
disappointed, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I think there's at least three receivers you could do that with. Maybe even four, depending on who you ask. Really.
Yeah. So who else? So Brees Hall's the number one. Do we think Kenneth Walker is going to be the number two drafted rookie in Dynasty owner, or are we thinking somebody else?
It'll probably be 50-50, I think, or somewhere around there. I just think if the Chris Carson, if he were to get cut before our rookie drafts, yeah, he's a lock. But I don't see that happening, that soon. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a couple of these wide receivers you know, getting some love at the number two spot.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, Walker's probably there, and then you're right. And then I saw some people are thinking Traylon Burks, and I think part of the reason is because Tennessee traded so much to get him. He is a little bit cheaper than the rest of than all the other first round wide receivers because he was taken I think he was the 18, and the difference between like the 8, the 10, the 11, and the 18 is a couple of million. It's like $1.5 million at least, $2 million. So I got to think that bumps Burks up a little bit in terms of the hierarchy. But yeah, I think the five first round wide receivers are in that first round. The first rookies off the board. It's probably just honestly a case of personal preference at that point, or maybe salary cap restrictions. I mean, if you don't have that's part of the thing about Dynasty owner. If you really wanted Drake London but don't have enough salary cap for room for him, you cannot take Drake London. You have to make a move, drop somebody, trade somebody, do something to free up the salary cap room to draft Drake London. You will not be allowed to draft him without the salary cap room. You can't take him and say, "Oh, I'll deal with that later."
Yeah, yeah. And I think as far as Drake London goes, I think he'll be probably the highest drafted wide receiver out of all the rookies.
Okay. Yeah, I
I
mean,
just
it's possible. I was just using him as that example because
Yeah, yeah.
he was the first one picked, so he's the most salary. So like if you had, I think his salary is like 5.8. So if you had $5.5 million in salary cap room, you can't take Drake London. You could take Garrett Wilson, but you can't take Drake London. You'd have to kind of find that extra little bit to take Drake London. So, which I don't think is going to affect many people, but a couple here and one or two here and there, and he might drop. You never know.
Yeah.
But, and so who else? I mean, who else do you think is going to be the first rookie? I think the first rookie quarterback off the board has got to be Kenny Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, but I don't think he's gonna go all that high. I see him maybe in the 7 range, somewhere around there, and possibly even all the way to the back end of the first round, just depending on your league.
Okay. Okay. So we were going to get into this later, but one of the questions I was going to have is I have the 1-2 in a rebuilding league that I have Patrick Mahomes as my starting quarterback, but I don't. But my other quarterbacks are backups. It's Teddy Bridgewater and I think Jacoby Brissett. So I don't even have a bench quarterback who I can plug in and be guaranteed to get points. So what you're telling me and what I kind of have thought myself is that it's a little too high for Kenny at the 2 pick.
Yeah, I would. I would try to trade down, maybe. Somebody that's interested in Kenneth Walker or wanting to jump up to grab their favorite rookie wide receiver. Maybe try to trade down to. I'd say if you really really want him, I'd say 1-7 at the latest, or at the. I wouldn't trade past the 1-7 if you want to guaranteed to get them. I would say, but you got to look at your league as well. If somebody's competing and really in need of a quarterback and they have a high pick for some reason, they'll probably snag them from you.
Yeah. Well, I don't think I'm going to trade the 1-2 pick. I'm that league. I need everything in that league. Honestly, I like Kenneth Walker a lot. I'm a Miami fan. I went to Miami, and Miami played Michigan State early in the year, and Kenneth Walker ran all over us, and I was very impressed. I mean, our defense wasn't great, but he just ran all over us, and I was like, wow. So I've actually probably not the best way to develop an affinity for a player, but I thought he was very impressive. And Seattle, landing spot of Seattle, a team that likes to run the ball. Injury questions. And, I'm not a huge, I think Rashad Penny is fine, but I think he gets a lot of yards. He gets a lot of points against bad teams. And then against good teams, he kind of doesn't do much.
That, and he's been hurt so much. There's no way you can count on that guy.
Yeah.
They drafted Kenneth Walker high for a reason. So
yeah,
he's definitely going to see the field a lot.
Yeah, so I think at the 2 pick, personally, I mean, assuming that the 1 goes for Breece Hall, I'm just going to take Kenneth Walker and be happy. I mean, I don't need Kenny Pickett as much as I could probably find somebody else in that and make it work for like a season, and maybe take like in the second round, take like a Ritter or Malik Willis and, park them on my practice squad for a season.
Yeah, and if for some reason, Rashad Penny tears it up this year and doesn't get hurt, who cares? You're rebuilding. You'll have Kenneth Walker for next year.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point too. I mean, yeah, because he's only Rashad Penny's on a 1-year deal. He's at best he's a placeholder, and so is Chris Carson. If Chris Carson came back and was fine, he's still on a 1-year deal as well. So yeah, I got to think that Kenneth Walker is the running back in 2023 for Seattle, without a doubt. So, all right. So, any other rookies you want to talk about, sort of going high off the board, who people might not think about, especially in terms of because of our format, because of the salaries?
I mean, outside of the obvious ones, I think you'll see people reaching for either Sky Moore or Christian Watson.
Okay.
I don't know that I call him a reach, but if you're taking them ahead of like Jamison Williams and stuff like that, then I'm calling it a reach.
Okay. I might have taken a reach in a dynasty, non-dynasty owner league recently, because I took Sky Moore, I think, ahead of, I don't think it was Jameson Williams. I forget who it was, but I took him ahead of somebody. But I was not happy. I wanted others and didn't get there, and so I just drafted Sky Moore.
Yeah.
So
happens to us all.
Well, the problem is I have enough wide receivers that I don't need Sky Moore to be one of my wide receivers in that league. I really wanted I think I wanted somebody else, and so I just didn't get them. So it kind of threw me off. I don't pay attention a ton to that league, to be honest with you. It's a charity league. So, All right. So, um, okay. Do you want to? We're kind of. Why don't we talk about? You had a bunch of trades. You sent me a bunch of trades. So, we're going to talk about trades. And if you want us to talk about a trade here on this, send us your trade. Take a screenshot of it. Post it on Twitter. Hashtag DO trades. And we'll talk about it. I mean, you can tag Jay or I on Twitter too. I'm at StevieT33, and Jay is
At J Pounds NFL.
yeah. So tag us if you want us to talk about your Dynasty owner trade. You can send us that, or just hashtag it DO trades if you don't want to send it to both of us, and we'll talk about it on air. But Jay pulled a bunch of trades here, so let's talk about them.
All right, yeah. So this first trade actually involved one of my teams. It was a trade between me and my friend Bryce. Um, so what happened? I sent him Devontae Freeman, the pick 5 in the first round of the 2022 draft, and then a 2024 first and second. And I got back Jalen Waddle and the 112.
Okay.
This is
Yep.
the one we talked about this a week or two ago. Yeah, I was going to try to move up to get the 1.9. I tried. He said no, so I was like, all right, send it back.
So you got Waddle in the 112.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know. I'm not a big 2 years out on draft picks. I don't know. They don't. I guess they don't hold as much. I just don't see. You know, the person who everybody thinks is going to be the best pick in the 2024 draft right now is unlikely to be the best pick in the
Yeah.
2024 NFL draft when it actually comes around. I mean, if people drafted the NFL draft a year early, Spencer Radler would be on an NFL team right now instead of playing for South Carolina. Right? Am I
Yeah.
wrong?
No, you're not.
Exactly. I mean, there's tons of those people out there and stuff, and things happen, and I mean, yeah. So I'm fine. I'm fine with dealing it. If you want somebody to win now, I'm fine with dealing
Yeah,
2024 picks.
I'm also all in on with this team, so it was a no brainer for me.
Okay. Good. Well, I'm glad you're happy with it. So, all right. So, what's the second trade you have here?
The second one trade, it was another trade involving Bryce. He received Patrick Mahomes, Kyle Trask, and picked the sixth pick in the third round of this year's rookie draft. And then Josh Allen's gym shorts received Ryan Tannehill, Tua Tagovailoa. I just butchered that name.
Tua.
The 2-1, and then the 2024 first and second we just talked about in the Jalen Waddle trade. He traded them in this.
Oh, so it's the same. Okay, so he
Yep.
he basically traded your first former 24 first and second. So,
To get Mahomes. He is in a big rebuild. This is the one he's got all the draft picks in, and he has his building blocks are Trey Lance, Kyle Pitts. He's got another stud on his team. I'm just not thinking of it right now, but he's very unsure of Trey Lance, so he wanted to get a sure thing in Mahomes.
Yeah, and the good thing about Mahomes is that his contract is locked for the next 9-10 years.
Yeah.
So
So he knows by the time these 2023 guys are going to get paid that he's got 10 picks in that draft. So Mahomes will be a value pretty much at that point, and he can kind of pick and choose who he wants to keep.
Yeah. I always will lean towards having the best player in a deal. I mean, and effectively this deal is for me is Mahomes for Tannehill, Tua, and a little bit of a better draft pick. I think I would take Mahomes. I think I would take Mahomes on this because I'm not a big Tua fan. I was just reading. I edited Nate Christian's article about quarterbacks. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it yet, Jay, that he published today, but he made an interesting point about Malik Willis in terms of Ryan Tannehill, and that he doesn't think that Tannehill will get released this year, but he could get released or after this year. I'm sorry, but he could get released after next year because the dead cap hit on Tannehill just goes down dramatically.
Yeah.
And so, basically even though Tannehill might have more years left on that contract, you're only going to get him for 2 years at most. You might only even get him for 1 year. And I just, then at that point it becomes a year Tannehill and Tua for Mahomes, and I like Mahomes a lot better than that.
Yeah, yeah, you're shedding Tannehill's salary. Tua is very very uncertain, and you're getting pretty much a guarantee in Mahomes.
Yeah, the only bad side for Bryce on this, and he knows this, is that he's adding like $7 million in salary.
Yep.
And I assume the other order made him take Kyle Trask.
Yeah, either that or he has a ton of cap flexibility, so he can really afford to take on pretty much whoever he wants. So maybe that's just a developmental hope, and for when Brady retires and goes and makes $1 billion with Fox Sports.
Oh my God! Can you? Well, quick tangent on that. Good for him and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
who's Fox going to have? Who's their number one color announcer going to be this year? I mean, the guy, whoever they get, that guy knows he's not going to be the top guy next year. I
Yep.
mean, it's sort of like, oh, hey, you could be the top guy for a year.
Yeah, you're going to be our interim coach, is what they're telling him. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
exactly. Yes, it's like when the other coach gets fired, and you're the interim coach. Maybe we'll give you a cursory interview for the head coaching position, but we've already decided that we're hiring Sean Payton for the
Right.
next year. So yeah, exactly. Good reference. Good analogy. Because you're right. It is like being the interim coach. All right. So okay, now the next. Go ahead. You can do you got the next trade.
Yeah, we got a trade actually involving Steve here. Steve got Joseph DeGora, or did I say the first name right?
I think it's Hosea, but yeah.
Hosea DeGora, and he sent out Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, and I'm happy with this deal. I actually was hoping. I proposed trading Higbee to the person I traded him to, in the hopes that they would offer me back DeGora. And the reason why is that I have this league. I have two tight ends. I have Hunter Henry, and I have Rob Gronkowski, and I have Higbee. And Higbee's just a very expensive insurance policy at this point at $7 million. So I'm confident Gronk is coming back. I like Hunter Henry. He's expensive, but I'm happy to have him because I have savings elsewhere. And I liked DeGura because who knows if Tanyan's going to be back all year and what's going to happen next year. So, I was willing to give up the insurance policy for the $6 million in salary cap savings. And then what I did that's not part of this list as part of this deal was I picked up AJ Green and his $3.5 million contract pretty much at the same time, knowing that I'd get savings. So for me, effectively, this deal was AJ Green and DeGura for Tyler Higbee. And I saved $2.5 million.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit before the podcast, but I'm not a Tyler Higbee guy, so I actually like the trade, especially because you're getting a savings with it.
Yeah, and for the other guy, his defense, his tight end situation was Kittle's backup Ross Dwelly, and then DeGura. So he got Higbee to be his bench tight end, and maybe if Kittle gets hurt, his starting tight end. So it could turn into a good deal for him because you wouldn't want to have Hosea DeGura as your starting tight end.
Yeah, that would be an ugly situation.
Exactly. So he shored up that spot. He just had to pay salary, but he had a lot of salary cap room, which is why I kind of threw Higbee out there for him. I looked at his team and said he has room to take Higbee and he has a need for Higbee. So, and I didn't. And so I'm happy with that deal. All right. So we got one more, right? There was one more you had, right? Or two more. You had two more.
Looks like two more, yeah. So this one we had Team Avitt. He received Teddy Bridgewater, the 1-2 and the 1-9, and he sent out Zach Wilson, the 1-3 and the 3-3.
I like the Teddy B side on this. I love Teddy B. I know I think, and I have Teddy Bridgewater in a couple of leagues, and I've kept him. I drafted him way back when he was the starter in Carolina. I kept him when he went to Denver because his salary got reduced, and I thought it was great. I'm actually still keeping him, even though he's the backup in Miami, because I think it's a very good possibility that he will play some this year. Tua hasn't played a whole season since 2018. So I think it's a very real possibility that Teddy plays. And if you put Teddy with those weapons, he's going to produce some points. And he's $6.5 million. You know, I'd rather keep him on my roster and get him when he's needed, as opposed to like if Tua goes down and then the next week, like everybody's bidding $5-10 million dynasty dollars on Teddy Bridgewater's services.
Yeah.
I'll hang on to him as my third quarterback and maybe use him if he's when Tua gets hurt.
I hope I'm not ruining Avit's plan here because he's got a Steelers logo as his picture. So I'm assuming his plan here is, he wasn't a big Zach Wilson guy, moved up a little bit in the draft. Now he's getting either Brees Hall, Kenneth Walker, or really whoever he wants outside of the one person that gets taken ahead of him. And then with the 1-9, he's going to go Kenny Pickett.
It's very possible. Very possible. I mean, then effectively the deal is, Zach Wilson and who would like the best wide receiver, whoever the other team wants as wide receiver for Kenny Pickett, Walker or Hall and Bridgewater.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't predict the three picks, so we won't bother.
All right. So the last trade we got here, Havana Club 79 they received Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Rashad Bateman, and the 1-2. And then Team Avid received Terry McLaurin, Najee Harris, the 212, and a 2023 third.
Ooh, that's an interesting deal.
Yeah, it really is.
Avid saves it's not a lot of cap room, but like what? I want to say $2 million in cap room. Goes down a lot in the draft. I don't know if I would give up the 1-2 though. I guess you're getting Najee for the 1-2. I mean, but the hard part in evaluating this deal is, I think, is the Bateman part, because the range of outcomes for Bateman could be he could be the number one wide receiver in Baltimore, and do really, really well with Marquise Brown gone. He could also stink up the joint and give you absolutely nothing. And then Baltimore drafts a wide receiver next year and kind of gets rid of him, or they just throw it to Mark Andrews like 500 times.
Yeah. I like Bateman. He looked actually pretty solid when he played last year. This is, like you said, this is a tough trade to evaluate. I would actually, to even halfway announce a winner here, I would need to see the salaries, the roster.
Yeah.
I got to know if Avit's competing for a title this year. If he's not, I don't like it for his side. If he is, I love it for his side, because McLaurin's going to get paid next year too. But if you're going all in for this season, I like it. But like I said, I gotta know more before I can announce a winner on this one.
Well, and this might be one of those deals where there's no real winner. Got people, both teams got what they wanted, and everybody's a winner. My deal, I don't think I mean, I like my side of my deal, but I wouldn't call me the winner of that deal. I think the guy I traded with got exactly what he wanted. He got an upgraded tight end. He got a guy he could reasonably put as his number one tight end if George Kittle gets hurt, and he spent a little bit of salary cap, but he had a lot of salary cap room. He, that $6 million isn't killing him.
Right.
So he got a good deal. He got a good deal in that. He took a guy off my hands who I really, really just couldn't afford on a team. Tyler Higbee. If I'm paying, Hunter Henry $12.5 million, if I'm paying Gronk $8 million, if he gets the same contract as last year, and I'm paying Tyler Higbee $7 million, I'm spending $27 million on tight ends.
Yeah, and knowing you got Gronk, I realistically see him getting a little bit of a bump in pay for him to come back. So you definitely a smart trade on both ends there.
Yeah, and actually, I needed the cap room to pay the Gronk bump too, because I would expect the Gronk bump to be, I think he's going to get 10 million at least.
Yeah, 10 to 12, somewhere in there.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, maybe I would have had to like release Higbee, Or I
Yeah.
would have had to trade him and everybody knew why I was trading. You know what I mean? I would have had to put him on the block and everybody be like, oh, he's got to get rid of him because Gronk just got paid and he doesn't have any salary cap room.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. So smart move for both. You gotta love those trades.
yeah. Yeah. You do not. I know everybody likes to say who wins a trade, but sometimes both teams can win. It's not a
And
bad
yeah,
thing.
and to be realistic, you really don't know who wins a trade until the season plays out and if somebody wins a championship or even, with the draft picks, it's gonna take a couple years to really know who won the trade.
Yeah. No, agreed. I mean, yeah. So they always say that I always hear that the NFL, they say about the NFL draft, they grade them right away, but the real grade comes like 3 years later.
Yep.
So, but they never seem to do those grades.
No, and it's fun to go back and watch like redrafts a couple years later and see how much things change. There's a few that stay the same, but usually the whole first round is just a complete crapshoot.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, yeah, you definitely don't draft the same redraft. You definitely don't draft the same team that you drafted the year before. Even if you won the title.
Yep.
So, all right, that's good. So, anything else we want to talk about tonight, Jay? I mean, it's getting late here.
Yeah. No, I think that's it for me.
Okay. No, I agree. That was good. That was a good conversation. Let's see what else we got. So on Dynasty, what we got coming up is we're going to do another one of those rookie mock drafts next week on the live stream. Because I think that was fun. It was popular. It's something we can do it on the live stream because it's pretty. It's the Dynasty rookie drafts are 3 rounds. They're pretty quick, and then we can even talk about the picks, which I think was fun. So hopefully you can do that. Maybe I'll join this one. I bumped myself out because we had too many people, but maybe you can do it again. And then what else is going on? So we've got the first. So this will probably be published on Friday. And then Saturday is the first Dynasty Owner startup drafts. I think all of them are filled. There were a couple that had I think there were 1 or 2 that had spots that they figured would fill. So they'll do the draft, but other ones were completely filled. So like they've got 12 teams. They're ready to go. They're locked and loaded. They just don't know their draft. They don't know their spot, which is actually the cool part a little bit. I think is I like,
Yeah, I like it.
yeah, because you find out it's a couple hours before the draft. You find out your spot.
Yep.
So you can't sit there and mock draft in the 4 slot knowing you have the 4 slot because you might not get the 4 slot. So, it makes it a little bit different and it makes it, you sort of have to adjust on the fly. And I think that's a fun part of me for drafting. Honestly, at times is adjusting on the fly because you're kind of assuming that some guys are going to be there and then all of a sudden they aren't, or like a guy you didn't expect to be there is there. And you're like, oh, do I take him or do I go with the plan I had? Or wait a minute, he looks kind of nice and shiny over in the corner. I like him. Why don't I take him instead?
Yeah, it's that Dynasty Owner has so many fun little wrinkles in it, and that's just one of them. There's so much more. If you guys are new users, definitely check it out.
Yeah, and go do a mock draft, do some rookie mock drafts. We have both, so you can have a regular startup mock draft with all the players and a rookie mock draft with just the rookies. The salary cap doesn't affect too much on the rookies, but it's good to know who people are taking. And as we get more into drafting season, the ADP will start to get pretty real. It's a little wonky right now because there aren't as many drafts going on, and so 1 or 2 drafts can kind of throw it completely out of whack. But the real ones are coming, so I think Monday, if I get the data, I'm going to try to pull the data together and have an article Monday looking at like the early ADPs, the real actual ADPs, not the mock draft ADPs, but actual ADP. And last couple of years, I like doing it. I think it's fun is that I do some analysis. I find like the draft pick that's kind of way out of whack. So I remember several years ago, somebody took Daniel Jones with like the 6th pick overall. And that was crazy to me. It was crazy. I mean, I think this team took him with the 6th pick and nobody took Daniel Jones until like the 45 pick. I mean, the gap was crazy. I mean, you looked at Daniel Jones's ADP and it was kind of high, and it was because it was all based on one person taking him way too early.
Yeah.
So I always like to do that. And then I also like to maybe I'll look at some people where like shockingly, like, somebody fell a huge amount in a draft and somebody got a steal. So I call the term is fan club president. It's sort of like if you own a lot of shares of a certain guy, you're kind of the fan club president of that guy. Like I was a Jimmy Garoppolo fan club president for a while because I had him everywhere a couple of years ago. I still have him a couple places, but not everywhere like I used to. So, but I'll put those guys out. I'll talk about some of the ADP, the early ADPs, and tell people what went on. How many people. It's always fun to know like how many people go right up to the salary cap number, how many people kind of hang back, and you can see the different strategies. You'll see what happens when you pick it out. Because I mean, mock drafts are one thing, but not everybody drafts a mock draft like they would draft a real draft. And so this is your for reals team that you've paid for, and you have to play with. You actually have to play with. The mock drafts are fun, but you don't have to play with that team.
Yeah, 100% agree on that one.
So hopefully we'll be having that article. That'll be out Monday. You'll be back Tuesday with another rebuilding article.
Yep, I'm gonna do one about my dad's mock draft for a new user experience.
Okay, yeah. So Jay's dad is a brand new Dynasty owner. He doesn't have a team yet. He's got you're going to be in a league with him, I think you said.
Yeah, we have him and a couple of guys. Actually, my new job that I have is he works there as well. So a couple of us from work and him is going to join, and then we'll probably fill it up with whoever wants to join after that.
Okay, cool. And so your dad's never played Dynasty. He did do our mock draft, and so you're going to talk to him about the experience with the mock draft and kind of how it was different than he's used to. I mean, he's played a lot, right? He's played a lot of fantasy football.
Yeah, he's been playing for probably 20, 25 years now.
Okay, so he's not a rube. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, he definitely is experienced. And I'll just kind of want to ask him, what's different? What's different from regular Dynasty? What would you do different now that you've experienced it once? Things that I feel will help people out going into their first startup.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's all good stuff, because it is much different your first one, and depending on the league you get in, you might be like your dad in that mock draft. He was the only newbie.
Yeah.
And that it's possible if you're new, you could be the only newbie. And so that'll be interesting. So cool. All right. So follow us. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. DynastyOwner.com is the website. On Twitter, it's at Dynasty_owner. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter if you want to follow us there. You can follow me on Twitter at StevieT33.
And at JPoundsNFL.
Great. And hopefully keep listening. Hopefully we'll have more tips. We'll do more stuff. And we'll be back. Jay and I will be back next week with another episode of the Dynasty Owner Podcast. And thanks for listening. Have a great day.
See you guys.